Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Hayya ala salah. Allahu Akbar.
Arise, giving the most high praise to Allah, and the highest honor to his prophet, noble God. Today I would like to demonstrate something kind of similar along the same lines that our brother was demonstrating from, that we are, as he has up here, a divine and national movement. And like he said, some people will come into this movement and say that, they only acknowledge the national side, or they may only acknowledge the divine side. But why did our prophet say that we're a divine and a national movement? Well, as he says, we have a divine constitution and bylaws. So a divine people need divine laws to govern them, or need to be in line with those divine laws. So I want to read from our Circle 7 first. And I'm going to read from chapter 35. Chapter 35, starting at verse 19. And actually, I'm going to grab my phone for a second. As a spiritual people know, any text, any holy text is I hate to use the word sequel, but something coming after the previous text. So our Holy Quran, our Circle 7, it helps further explain the Quran of Muhammad. And the Quran of Muhammad further explains our Piscean text, which we also know as the Bible. And so I am going to read, before I read that chapter, I'm going to read something from Deuteronomy 14, if I can find it. Deuteronomy 14, verse 2. I'll start at verse 1. Deuteronomy 14, starting at verse 1. And it says, "Ye are the children of the Lord your God. Ye shall not cut yourselves, nor make any baldness between your eyes for the dead. For thou art an holy people unto the Lord thy God. And the Lord hath chosen thee to be a peculiar people unto himself, above all nations that are upon the earth." And then going into this chapter, Deuteronomy 14, we have the laws that are given to us, a divine people, a peculiar people that are set apart, a holy people. And so now I'll read from chapter 35, starting at verse 19, and listen to the similarity. It says, "But thee he hath distinguished with a peculiar favor, and exalted thy station above all creatures. But thee he hath imbued with reason to maintain thy dominion. He hath fitted thee with language to improve thy society, and exalted thy mind with the powers of meditation to contemplate and adore his immutable perfections." So I'll stop at this verse for a second, because this verse is saying a lot, and we skim over it, but I think that we don't really break it down. It says that we were imbued with reason. Anybody have a measure on reason, or what it means to reason? Islam? Nobody? Islam. I'll wait. Islam.
What is within naturally,
Okay.
right
Islam.
or wrong?
Islam. So us as that peculiar people, we have that ability to reason, and like you said, to determine what's right and what's wrong for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So which is important, because if we look at our Circle 7, the symbol on our Circle 7 are these 4 gates. Okay. And someone may, tell you have to go the route of the Hebrews, and may, press that on you. This sister right here, she didn't grow up here. That may not be the path that she walks. She may walk another path, a completely different path. So this sister right here may look at Buddha as her prophet, and get the same teachings from Buddha that we may get from Prophet Jesus. But as long as she honors all true and divine prophets the same, and she reasons within herself what's right and wrong for herself, for himself, or whoever it is, and finds yourself at that 7, that perfected man, then all is well. And that reason was given to us to maintain our dominion. When we transgress or we break these things, break these laws that we know are embedded in us, then we throw ourselves off of our square, and we become our own devils, and we become our own gods, and we punish ourselves because we know that we're doing wrong, and we know that we have that guilty conscience. So it says, but thee he hath imbued with reason to maintain thy dominion. He hath fitted thee with language to improve thy society. So language, not just speaking of different languages like Hebrew, Arabic, English, not just speaking of different languages, but the way we communicate with each other. The way, when we speak to each other, do we speak to each other like Negroes? Do we strive to raise each other up? I was speaking to a sister this week. I was speaking to 2 sisters actually, speaking about credit and, raising your credit and getting your credit score up. And one sister, she just had she was speaking English. We were all 3 speaking English. But one sister had so much negative to say about everything. Well, do I have to give my social security number? Well, no, I don't want to do that. There's too many scams going on out here. And the other sister was really receptive. Okay, well, what can I do? So we were all speaking English, but one sister and myself were speaking the language of love, the language of growth, the language of progress, while one sister was, kind of set in her ways, and hopefully, she will evolve from that. But that language, what we speak into each other, it's the same thing when you speak into a child. When you speak into a child, you can see how that manifests. You can see how a parent can speak into one child and speak hate, self-hate, because generally people that speak hate or the language of hate, they hate themselves. And they put that onto everyone in their environment. But those that love themselves, which is why it's important to love instead of hate, and learning to love yourself and your people around you, those that speak love, everything around them grows. If the things around you are not growing, then you have to go inside of yourself and reevaluate and see what's happening within you. What is it within you that you don't love? Because nothing can grow in hate. Nothing can grow in a toxic environment. Islam. So he hath, speaking of Allah, he hath fitted thee with language to improve thy society, and exalted thy mind with the powers of meditation, to contemplate and adore his immutable perfections. So I want to look at what power is. And give me a second while I find it in our Circle 7. Islam chapter 7. And these are, for those that are new to the Moorish Science Temple of America, or new to Moorish Science, or new to Prophet Noble Drew Ali, or new to even reading the Circle 7, because there may be some of us that may have been Moorish Americans but don't necessarily frequent the Circle 7. This chapter here is very, very, very important because it's the foundation. It lays a foundation of Moorish definitions. We may go out into the world, or we may look into, nothing against the dictionary, excuse me, he can't speak right now, but the American Heritage Dictionary, if I'm not mistaken, nothing against that. But we, as Moorish Americans, we have the power to define. We have that power. As creators, as seeds of Allah thrown forth, we have the power to define not just who we are, but how we view and interpret the greater world. So this chapter here, chapter 7, lays a lot of foundation on what man is, what truth is, what power is, what understanding is, what faith is. So this is a very important chapter to study in your spare time. But just for now, we're going to read verse 14. And this is our prophet Jesus speaking to a brother named Lamaz. And it says, again Lamaz asked, what do you say of power? And Jesus said, it is a manifest. It is the result of force. It is but not It is illusion, nothing more. Force changes not, but power changes as the ethers change. So, taking that definition of power, and we're going to come back to this so we can go over force, but taking that definition of power, it says that Allah has exalted our mind with the powers of meditation. So understanding that power is just an illusion, understanding that power changes, we also have to understand that our mind may change from minute to minute, from circumstance to circumstance. So in this minute, we may be, because we're in the temple and because we're surrounded by our people and fellowshipping, we may feel, very spiritually high. We may feel strong and encouraged to worship Allah. But in that moment where a bill is due and you don't know how you're going to pay it, or somebody just stepped on your new shoes, or somebody just cut you off in traffic and flipped you the bird, are you still going to be your higher self? Are you still going to have that power of meditation? And what are you using that power of meditation to do? It's to contemplate and adore His immutable perfection, speaking of Allah. So I don't know how often people, I do this, just drive down the street and look at the trees, look at the sun, whether it's a sunny day or a rainy day, a cloudy day, and just appreciate the creation of Allah. Mm-hmm. Or look at each other and appreciate the creation of Allah. Look into someone's eyes and appreciate that part of Allah that connects you to them. So that's what these powers of meditation are for. And we also have to understand that those powers, they change. So it's our duty as Moorish Americans, as Muslims, as spiritual people, as believers, as the faithful, to make sure we use that power and keep that power on worshiping Allah and adoring His perfections. And I want to go back just to touch on force, what force is. And I'll start from verse 14 again from chapter 7. It says, "Again Lamas asked, 'What do you say of power?' And Jesus said, 'It is a manifest, it is the result of force. It is but not. It is illusion, nothing more. Force changes not, but power changes as the ethers change. Force is the will of Allah and is omnipotent, and the power is that will and manifest, directed by the breath. There is a power in the winds, a power in the waves, a power in the lightning stroke, a power in the human arm, a power in the eye. The ethers cause these powers to be, and the thought of Elohim, of angel, man, or other thinking things directs this force. When it has done its work, the power is no more." Islam. So using this, it says that not inactive objects don't direct force. Thinking things direct force. So we are to be constantly thinking about how we can be better, how we can worship Allah more, how we can redeem our people, how we can serve Allah. And from our brother's measure here, if we were listening, how do we serve Allah? We serve Allah by serving our next of kin. So any opportunity that you get to be be of assistance to your brother or your sister, that's an opportunity to serve Allah.
Absolutely.
So we should look at it in that way and really understand what it means to serve Allah and what it means to meditate and contemplate His immutable perfections. And I'll go on and read a little bit further down in chapter 35. It says, "And in the laws He hath ordained as the rule of life, so kindly hath He united thy duty to thy nature, and obedience to His precepts is happiness to thyself. Oh, praise His goodness with songs," and I don't want to skip over that verse, and I'll read it again. "And in the laws He hath ordained as the rule of life." So these laws that He has established for us, it says, "So kindly hath He united thy duty," because we have divine rights, as the brother mentioned, we also have divine duties as well. So it comes with a responsibility. Mm-hmm. We have an inheritance. That inheritance comes with a responsibility. Mm-hmm. Would you give, let's say you have 2 children, and you have, a life insurance policy, or you have an inheritance that you want to give to one of your children, would you give it to that wise child who is able to reason and gives you honor and is able to communicate effectively to create bonds with people? Or would you give it to that child who is not prudent over the things that they're given? You would give it to that one who would increase it. Just like the story in the Piscean text of the talents. The one that manifested more talents with what they were given more in the end. So it's the same thing here. We have a duty. So here it's saying, and the laws he hath ordained as the rule of life, so kindly hath he united thy duty to thy nature. So it says in our Holy Quran of Muhammad that that Islam is a simple faith. Our peace is a simple faith. It's a simple faith. Why is that? Because our duty is our very nature. And what makes it so complicated is when we fight against Allah, and we know better than Allah, and we are smarter than Allah, and we think that we're going to do our own thing. The text or our spirit, our nature says one thing, but we want to do the opposite of our nature. Our nature says don't eat a pork chop because it's going to make you sick. It's going to make you have all kind of all kinds of sicknesses and ailments once you get older, or even when you're young sometimes. But we say it tastes so good, it'll be all right. We all have to die anyway. So we go against our very nature, and we do what we want to do. And that's what makes life difficult. But when we follow these laws that are set in place that we know in our nature anyway, these texts are just a reminder. When we follow these laws, he says his precepts is happiness to thyself. It brings happiness to us. We feel joyous. And in the chapter that the brother read, it says our continence will be lightened. And people can see when you're following your laws. It says, oh, praise his goodness with song and thanksgiving, and meditate in silence on the wonders of his love. This is an instruction. Oh, praise his goodness with song and thanksgiving, and meditate in silence on the wonders of his love. Let thy heart overflow with gratitude and acknowledgement. Let the language of thy lips speak praise and adoration. We can't complain all the time. If we are servants of Allah, we shouldn't be complaining.
That's right.
Because Allah gives us what we need on this plane. Let the actions of thy life show thy love to his law. Allah is just and righteous, and will judge the earth with equity and truth. Hath he established his laws in goodness and mercy, and shall he not punish the transgressor thereof? O think not, bold men, because thy punishment is delayed, that the arm of Allah is weakened. Neither flatter thyself with the hopes that he winketh at thy doings. His eye pierceth the secrets of every heart. He remembereth them forever. He respecteth not the persons or the stations of men. That means if we hold an office, or we are a celebrity, or we are someone high up, Allah doesn't care. Allah doesn't care about your station. He cares about what's inside of your heart. What's inside? What are you doing to worship him, or to assist in the work that has to be done to redeem our people? The high and the low, the rich and the poor, the wise and the ignorant, when the soul hath shaken off the cumbersome shackles of this mortal life, shall equally receive from the sentence of just and everlasting retribution, according to their works. Then shall the wicked tremble and be afraid, but the heart of the righteous shall rejoice in his judgments. O fear Allah, therefore, all the days of thy life. Walk in the paths which he hath opened before thee. Let prudence admonish thee. So be careful before you make your actions. Think about it. Use that reason, like the sister said, because we know in our spirit what's right and what's wrong. But we have to take a step back and not be so reactionary. and really think about what we're doing. So we should let our own prudence admonish thee, not your grand sheik, not your mom, not your dad, not your husband, not your wife. Let your own prudence admonish thee. It may come through those people, but we have to remember to let that prudence admonish thee. Let temperance restrain thee. Let justice guide thy hand. Benevolence warm thy heart, and gratitude to heaven inspire thee with devotion. These shall give thee happiness in thy present state, and bring to thee mansions of eternal felicity or eternal happiness in the paradise of Allah. This is the true economy of human life. Islam. And in that chapter, we should look at how many times happiness is mentioned and what is to be the root of our happiness. Everything that is the root of our happiness goes back to serving Allah, being servants of Allah, that great God. And the last thing, we don't necessarily have to go there, but I just want to just kind of want to touch on it. Chapter 2, verse 13. And just to kind of ask a question to kind of get us thinking, because thinking things are what directs that force of Allah. It says, an age has passed, the gate unto another age flies open at the touch of time. This is the preparation age of soul, the kingdom of Emmanuel, of Allah and man. And I want us to think about, or kind of ponder throughout our week or throughout the month or however long, how do we prepare our souls? If you knew that you were going to meet Allah, whatever that means to you, how would you prepare your soul? How would you clean your soul to meet Allah or to be one with Allah? How would you? Islam. Repentance. Islam. That's a great response. Islam. So what does that mean to you, and how can we start doing that as a nation of people? Because we are a nation. How can we start doing that collectively? And how can we teach that to each other through our actions and through our words, like it said, through our language? How do we do that? And with that, I will leave you all as I came in peace. Islam.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Hayya ala salah. Allahu Akbar.